shop the sales. Think about coupons if they make sense for you. Have these conversations with your student about what makes sense for your family. And think about how involved children, especially younger children, can be about the purchases, and start letting them share in some of the decisions.
It's back-to-school shopping season, and the National Retail Federation reports that shoppers anticipate paying more for school supplies, clothing, and electronics. As a result, back-to-school and back-to-college shoppers are implementing savings-focused shopping behaviors. On today's Sound Living, strategic back-to-school shopping. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman. The survey by the National Retail Federation found that 43% of back-to-school shoppers plan to do more comparative shopping online. 42% will shop sales more often, 35% will buy more store brand and generic products, and 24% will use coupons more often. That's up considerably from previous years. Back-to-college shoppers also plan to change the way they shop. K-State Research and Extension Family Resource Management Specialist Elizabeth Kish encourages back-to-school shoppers to have a plan and to do their homework before making purchases. Elizabeth, it seems like back-to-school time is always a little bit stressful from the standpoint that not only do we have to collect a lot of things, but we also have to figure out how we're going to finance all of these things. And really, I guess it's a process as to how we go about doing it.
That's right. And thinking of it as a process is a really good approach, because nowadays there's no reason necessarily that it's just a one-time event that you do all your shopping at once, you get it all at once. If families can possibly think about what is it that we need to start the school year, and then what are we going to need as the school year continues, can be a way to look at it. And also to separate it into what are school supply things that your student needs to take to the classroom versus maybe back to school clothes or just clothes in general based on how they're growing.
There are some things that we just have to get because the school says you need to bring these either on the first day or the first week or so. And then, like you say, there's also the other things that we just kind of like to incorporate into back to school.
That's right. And I think that earlier you can start shopping. And remember, when I say shopping, I mean there's the looking, there's the online, seeing what the prices are, seeing what's available, and then there's the buying. And so the looking, the sooner maybe you start that and get a feel for what the prices are, what the choices are, then you know when you see a good price and you can jump on it.
The school is going to give you the supply list, so that's something that you really could easily do online.
I think so, yeah. And we know, for example, the National Retail Federation released some data earlier this month that as of July 6th, about 25%, so 1 in 4 families with either a student going back to school or a student going back to college have already started getting things together, shopping and buying.
Well, that's what you would recommend, right, is you start as early as you can because then you have longer to spread out those purchases?
That's right. Unless you've sort of been saving a little bit, putting a little bit aside. But let's face it, summer can be expensive and prices have gone up. So that's maybe not been possible this year. So yes, definitely, if you can spread it out and learn what really good prices are so that, again, when you see them, you can jump on them.
And there may be some sticker shock, like you mentioned, because probably what they paid for certain supplies last year may be double that this year.
Well, yeah, and I don't know. Certainly, again, according to the National Retail Federation, the majority of back-to-school and back-to-college shoppers expect to see prices higher this year than last year. And that could just be an expectation. I think they often release data about what things actually were higher and how much families actually spent, but that data is not out there yet.
For those that have physical stores and want people inside their buildings, they're probably going to do some loss leaders on certain items?
Yeah, I would guess that would be the case. And, other ways to potentially save, certainly, comparison shopping online, shop for the sales more often. So just look at what are the weekly sales in physical stores and online. Look at store brands and generics, even in back-to-school products. And then if coupons are available and they make sense, think about using coupons as well.
Yeah, the coupons are only good if it's something you were going to buy to begin with.
Right. And again, you have to understand the parameters of the coupon. Do you have to buy 2 to get the third one. But if you don't really need a third one, then is it really a deal? So you have to think about that. Is it really a deal for your circumstances?
Should we start then with what we know we have to purchase? I guess that makes the most sense to start with the things that we have to buy to get the kids started in school?
I mean, I think so. These days, we have so many opportunities to shop and spend money that it's not like you're going to miss out. I know probably last year we've heard of some shortage, not necessarily in back to school or school supplies, but there could be. So, just get what you need to get the kids started for the school year. And then if you need to top it up later, you can do that because there will be more. And, every year it seems like there's the newest, latest trend of something, some tie-in to whatever, some character. And, you could think about it this way is you might miss this trend, but maybe you'll be a leader on the next trend. So, or maybe it doesn't matter. There's that part too.
Well, that kind of varies depending on the age too, doesn't it? Because sometimes kids reach a point where certain clothes, certain things become more of a status as opposed to something that is practical. But at the same time, I guess parents are always kind of looking to at least appease in one area or another. So that may be a discussion that has to take place is what's the most important fun thing that you want to have?
Right. And I think even with back to school, there is a place for conversations about choices and, your family's values or your household's values about spending money. That is true for clothes. It's true for supplies. Think about if your kids are going to take their lunches, what sort of lunch, that kind of thing. Just talk about it, why you may be making some choices. And it doesn't mean the kids are going to agree or disagree, but they're curious and they're learning and they're going to take that understanding forward through their lives.
And it's also nice if they're making some of the decisions because then I guess they're a little bit more responsible for what you have bought and they may not throw quite as much of a fit if they pick out the lunchbox as opposed to having dad pick out the lunchbox.
Possibly, yeah. And I think the other part of having some choice and some understood shared responsibility for taking care of items is things might not get banged up, they might not get lost or just forgotten, that kind of thing.
What are some other things that we should maybe think about in terms of our back-to-school purchasing?
Well, I think, shop the sales for sure. Again, think about coupons if they make sense for you. Have these conversations with your student about what makes sense for your family and think about how involved children, especially younger children, can be about the purchases and start letting them share in some of the decisions. Now, I know maybe for some families, especially also with older students, if they're working, there may be some conversation about, well, you're working, so maybe you're going to pay for X, Y, Z, but we're going to do the basics. Or, the household will pay for maybe the school supplies, but your school clothes, you can pay for that from your earnings. Or some conversations like that.
It used to be that this was a really big time for the back-to-school clothes shopping. I don't know if it still is. I'm assuming with some it probably is. But again, this is something that doesn't have to be done before school even begins because it's going to be warm for a while, so what you're wearing this summer is probably going to work. But then as you get towards fall, that may be when you really need to kick in that budget.
Yes. I mean, do you have memories of you had your brand new back-to-school clothes, but they were fall clothes and it was hot, but you just wanted to wear them, right? So I think in these hot days, the end of summer, that it's probably, as you say, okay to just keep wearing the summer clothes if they're suitable for school. And then think about when the weather turns a little bit, what size the kids are. Do they need new shoes? Do they need new winter coat? Do they need clothes because they've grown?
As we're talking about the budgeting process, is this also a good idea to start thinking about the extracurricular activities they may want to be involved in or continue if they're in certain sports or music, that sort of thing? Because that's something that you're going to have to work into your budget.
That's a really good point. Yes, I think it is. And also to have a conversation with your student about how many extracurricular activities and what sort are most appropriate based on their age and, the community and those kind of things. And yes, and how much it might cost. And definitely that's something to build into the budget.
I know with my youngest son, it seemed like he wanted to be involved with everything. So we did have to have that conversation of you only have so much time and you've also got to do some homework every once in a while. So you can't just be off doing extracurriculars. But that's a conversation that probably needs to take place.
I agree. That's definitely a good conversation to have.
I also saw something that was talking about the fact that sometimes if you can buy in bulk, that's a good idea. Even if you have a smaller family, you might be able to go together with other classmates' parents or friends, and maybe you can make some purchases that way and kind of split things up.
Sure, that's a really good idea. If buying in bulk really makes sense and you can figure it out with the other households. Well, and so this is revealing about me, but if you can trust that everyone will pay their share. Because you don't want to have those sort of bad feelings amongst friend groups, right? Parent groups. And also, in terms of clothing, are there swaps that can be made? You might have a younger child and an older child, and your friend might have someone in the middle, and maybe, there's clothing that can be swapped.
There's also places you can go besides the normal retail stores to buy clothing.
Oh, there's so many places nowadays. There's garage sales and Goodwill and other thrift outlets. Definitely lots of opportunities for that, too.
Are there any ideas for the back-to-college student? Because they're kind of in a different atmosphere. They're really young adults now, and they're going to maybe get some student loans, but they're probably relying on mom and dad a lot as well. So what comes into play for them?
Yes, I think for the back-to-college student, it's probably even more important to have a budget and to understand what at least the fall semester might totally cost, if not the whole year. Understand how much loans, grants, scholarships, what the money coming in to pay for the total costs, not just tuition and fees, but books, housing, recreation. And if the student's going to be working on campus, that's a really good time for a conversation about, okay, this is what the household, the family can support you. This is what you're going to have to come up with yourself. A lot of college students are working a lot of hours, though. I think that can be a challenge because, again, there's homework to be done. And so I do think there's a balance, though, that has to be found between earning the money and doing your schoolwork. College students tend to be really good workers, and some businesses, they give them as many hours as they'll say they'll take, which is not always in the best interest of the student. And so that's an opportunity for a conversation also about how many hours can you really work. Yes, you enjoy the money, but again, what's the balance? The goal is to get an education, to get out, to have a job, a career, maybe more than a job, if you're in college.
Well, and just seeing what the bottom line is, I think that's also eye-opening when they actually see the total cost of what it is for even a semester can be pretty staggering.
Right. And I would say even if in situations where families are paying the majority of a college student's expenses, there's no reason not to have that conversation with them. As you say, for the college student to have an appreciation of just how much it does cost and to understand that the value of every hour of class that they skip, because for whatever reason, maybe they're working or, that they just understand that this is an investment. And the reason we invest in human capital, which is education, is so that over our working lives, we ultimately earn more. And so if we're not taking that investment seriously, we're kind of cheating ourselves, which is not to say we can't have fun and all those things.
Any other thoughts on what we should really be thinking about in terms of just kind of getting on the right page for back to school?
No, I think we've really covered it. I guess I would say, back to school is a seasonal time, just like some other seasonal events that will be coming up in the fall. So, you don't want to spend everything you have for back to school because don't forget the Halloween, Thanksgiving, the end of your holidays. And so maybe some of this, like the clothing particularly, or if your student has a computer that can get them to the beginning of the school year, but maybe at Christmas or the end of your holidays, that's an opportunity to upgrade the computer or the technology. Just think about that. It's like the flow of holidays and events that will be coming up from now till the end of the year and, how you might fit them together.
That's K-State Research and Extension Family Resource Management Specialist Elizabeth Kish with information on back-to-school shopping. To learn more about managing family finances, contact your county or district extension office. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman, and this is the K-State Radio Network.